HATES, which stands for Hypermedia as the Engine of Application State, is a way to provide links to resources the client API can use. It works very similar to the way web links work when we browse web pages on the internet. When a web page loads, for example, additionally to the text content and to images that also load up, this HTML document contains links which user can use to navigate next to other pages of this website. So similarly with the REST API and HATES, when our API returns a JSON response with, let's say, user address details, the JSON document returned in the response can contain links to other relevant API calls which the user of our API can make. For example, additionally to returning address details, we can include into the JSON response a link to a profile details of a user who owns this address. We can also include a link to, let's say, a complete list of addresses this user has on his profile, or we could include a link to a list of users who also live at that address. So the API that implements HATES and includes links to relevant resources is very convenient to use by developers who use our API, and it looks very professional. So here's an example of how the JSON response will look like if we requested the details of one specific address, and the web service endpoint which responded with this JSON does not use HATES. In this example, it did not include links to any of the relevant resources. So when planning your API calls and the response details, think what links would it be useful to include into this response. Like, for example, would it be useful to include a link to a user profile maybe, or a link to a list of addresses? Let's now look at how this response could look if we made our web service endpoints use HATES. Here's an example of how the JSON response will look like if we enable our web service endpoints to use HATES and then we have requested address details for this specific address. The developer of a client application that communicates with our API now does not need to write much code to create links to a user profile or to a list of addresses, and using of our API becomes a much better experience. Okay, so let's learn now how to enable our RESTful web service endpoints to use HATES and how to include these links to relevant resources to a JSON document which is returned with the response.